And welcome everyone again to the presentation today by Dr. Andrei Zavialo, who will be sharing with us a presentation about his recent study on Ukrainian newcomers who came in 2022 after the unprovoked Russian aggression in Ukraine and under the WED program. So I welcome everybody to this Zoom Meet presentation and calling from the Secwepemc territory on Kamloops to Secwepemc in Thompson Rivers University, where I work, and we are connected through Zoom, where we can ensure that we know the lands of indigenous people where we are to ensure sovereignty and protection, and understanding that we are currently, I'm particularly on unceded territory of Secwepemc Hulu. So as we'll do our presentation today, I want to introduce our speaker and the reason why we all can have opportunity to learn so much from this extensive research. Dr. Andrei Zavialo has a PhD in sociology and research of Ukrainian diaspora. We had opportunity yesterday to listen to this presentation in Ukrainian, and today we will be looking more to hear this story about the research process in English. And Andrei had a lot of experience doing similar researches in different parts of the world. From our Ukrainian diaspora courses, we know that Andrew is now currently employed in Ukrainian Canadian Community Services in Toronto, serving Ukrainian community and supporting all the newcomers who access Ukrainian Canadian Community Services. In the past, he has been widely lectured in different places around the world, and including the Canadian Parliament as a Member of Parliament Assistant. He's a translator and has experience to do number of activities through his research in social adaptation of migrants, migration policy, ethnic policy, language policy, interethnic relations, ethnodemographic processes, and Ukrainian diaspora around the world. And one of the other area of passion, which I like to share, because Andrei is also teaching Ukrainian language around the world. So this is something which is incredible to see the diversity. And currently, as we had discussion prior to this, Andrew started as the Ukrainian immigration consultant in Toronto area. So if you know any newcomers who are looking for ethical, caring immigration consultant, you can connect also to Dr. Zavialo in addition to all the research parts. So we have opportunity today to listen to this extensive research, and at the end of the presentation, we'll be able to ask questions. So now it's time to make sure that Dr. Zavialo can lead us in this part.
Thank you so much for such a presentation. So yes, yesterday we had a presentation in Ukrainian, and today we have a presentation in English, and I'm sending two links to the chat where you can, if you want, access the sociological reports, which one is in Ukrainian and another one is in English. So you can follow the report if you want together with the presentation, because the presentation will contain page numbers of the report on the bottom right or bottom left. So while you're seeing the slide, you will see those numbers, and if you're right directly interested more in the topic, you can access the report and have a look more deeply on what I'm going to talk about. And today's presentation is possible thanks to the Ukrainian Canadian Social Services and thanks to Dr. Alexander Kondrashov from Thompson Rivers University. And this presentation is part of the Ukrainian Diaspora Studies series, and I'm very proud to be a part of it. And the topic of my presentation is recent Ukrainian newcomers to the Greater Toronto Area, stay or leave. So we will have a look at their immigration attitudes, if they want to stay here or not. But together with those two reports, which I've sent to the chat, you can also access the report using those QR codes. If you're like sitting in front of your laptop and there is a phone near you, you can access them right directly from this slide. And those reports are quite extensive. In Ukrainian, it's 97 pages, and in English, it's 95 pages. Sometimes people ask me why not 100. Yeah, it wasn't probably enough data for 100 pages, but like whatever. So about the research a little bit. So in light of the unprovoked Russian aggression against Ukraine and the ensuing hostilities, Canada and several European countries have been witnessing a significant influx of forced immigration from Ukraine. And due to the strategic initiatives implemented by Canada, particularly through the QED program, including, for example, the issuance of the 3-year work and study permits, federal financial assistance amounting to 3,000 Canadian dollars, and temporary accommodation services in government-financed hotel for a duration of up to 2 weeks. Those services were available until March 31st, 2024, along with ongoing support from settlement agencies, and this support is available until March 31st, 2025. Citizens of Ukraine and their accompanying family members, they got a chance to explore employment, education, and permanent residency options in Canada. Immigrating to Canada has historically been a challenging process for many, and the recent opportunity provided to Ukrainians as a safety measure paves the way for potential permanent immigration. Ukrainians are the first nations to receive assistance in such a magnitude from Canada. And while labeled as temporary, these measures have created numerous legal avenues for Ukrainians to prolong their stay in the country and potentially transition to permanent residency in the future. The current research relies on both quantitative and qualitative methods for collecting and analyzing information obtained at the field study. And the first stage was the principal survey, or like the main survey, where I utilized the Google form questionnaire comprising of 68 questions, which I've divided to 14 blocks, so the survey doesn't look like very long, where we got 1,011 participants, but well, the goal was 1,000, so we're a little bit overturned the goal, let's say. It's a little bit more. And this stage we had from July 4 to October 23, 2023. We in total had 1,081 individuals, but 70 of them didn't meet the established criteria. They were either residing outside of the Greater Toronto Area or entering outside of the QED program. So in total, we got 1,011. The survey questionnaire was shared through various channels, including social networks such as like Facebook and Telegram, with announcements about the survey periodically posted in various Ukrainian community groups within the Greater Toronto Area. Another one was the snowball method, wherein research participants were encouraged to share the questionnaire with their acquaintances. And the distribution of printed QR codes at prominent Ukrainian events, accompanied by an invitation to participate in the survey. Like, for example, I shared it during the celebration of Ukraine's Independence Day in Centennial Park in Toronto, or at the Bloor West Village Toronto Ukrainian Festival. And also, I collaborated with colleagues from different settlement agencies, and I listed them at the end of this presentation in the acknowledgement section. The second stage was 2 focus group sessions, which were conducted, each consisting of 8 participants. There were 16 in total. One group comprised of individuals intending to remain in Canada permanently, while the other consisted of those planning to leave. And these sessions, lasting 2 hours each, were conducted on August 30 and 31, 2023, at the Ukrainian Canadian Social Services Toronto office. So the main survey featured a question regarding participants' willingness to join a focus group, and those expressing interest were then prompted to provide their email addresses for contact. And the selection of 16 focus group participants was made from the pool of 272 respondents who shared their email addresses. And the third stage was an extra mini survey. It was like came to my mind, like absolutely accidentally when I was working on this report. that I need actually it. And this extra mini survey comprising 5 questions was conducted among the respondents who had provided their email addresses. And there were total of 168 participants in that. And the main reason of doing this last stage was to research if the prospects of their immigration attitudes have been changed during the time. So the survey is limited to the geographical boundaries of the Greater Toronto Area and the QED program participants who arrived in Canada between February 2022 and August 2023. Some quick facts about the diaspora, so it's quite clear why it's researched. So based on the 2021 census, Canada's population was like almost 37 million individuals, with 1,258,000 identifying as Canadians with Ukrainian heritage. This represents 3.4% of the total population. And only 273,000 individuals they indicated their sole Ukrainian origin, while others indicated like listed it together with others, other identities. Like for example, if there was a father German and the mother Ukrainian, in Canada it's possible to list both of them, Ukrainian and German, and those individuals were the majority who had listed 2 or more identities. Canada in 2021 emerged as the leading country globally in terms of the Ukrainian diaspora size for the first time in history, because, well, before Russia held this position until 2020, but currently Russia ranks 3rd after Canada and the USA, and this is, well, due to all the unfortunate situation which happens with the Ukrainian diaspora in Russia. In 2021, Alberta and Ontario were like leading provinces in Canada in terms of the size of the Ukrainian population, and they're like consistently changing their positions. One year it's Ontario number 1, and another year it's Alberta number 1. And in the Toronto metropolitan area, covering almost the entire Greater Toronto area, we had here in 2021 122,000 Ukrainians, and it was almost 2% of the Greater Toronto area, and almost 10% of all the Ukrainians in Canada. So like every 10th Ukrainian lives here in the Greater Toronto area. And since the beginning of the war, around 300,000 Ukrainians and their family members have entered Canada under the QED program as of June 2024. IRCC processed nearly 1.2 million QED applications, approving 963,000 of them. And as of April 2024, 90,000 QED program participants have reached Ontario, with the majority choosing to settle in the Greater Toronto area. Well, of course, everyone knows that's a desired place, a well-known destination for many immigrants. And as a powerhouse of the Canadian economy, the Greater Toronto area offers vast opportunities for employment and personal growth. However, of course, it has some problems here. And living in the GTAs, comes with distinct challenges, setting it apart from other regions in Ontario and Canada. For instance, there are notable issues such as housing shortages and the particularly acute scarcity of medical staff. But it's impossible, probably it's possible to solve those problems in the future, but we will see. However, it's also important to highlight that newcomers from Ukraine under the QED program are frequently referred to as refugees, and many of them may perceive themselves as such. Well, even though legally speaking, it's not the case. There are specific refugee programs in Canada, and Ukrainians arriving under QED are not eligible for any of them. These newcomers gain the right to work and study, categorizing them as temporary foreign workers with a work permit, foreign students with a study permit, or temporary visitor permit holders with a visitor record. And Moving to the next slide, I should say that experience of living in another country can indirectly influence immigration attitudes. There is a stereotype that those dissatisfied with their new country find it easier to adapt to relocation to a next new country. And this figure on the right provides generalized data on the countries of residence of respondents before their arrival in Canada. Sorry, on the left. Yeah, this figure on the left. And research participants, geography is quite diverse, as you can see. So, however, this figure to the right now finally presents more detailed quantitative data regarding Ukraine and where the respondents are coming from. And observing those two figures, we should say that slightly more than half of the respondents lived in Ukraine before moving to Canada. Here on the left, we can see that it's 50.4%, and it comprises of 509 research participants. And nearly a fifth resided in Poland, which was like 197 research participants. Another fifth lived in other European Union countries, excluding Poland here on the left figure, such as, for example, Germany, Italy, Hungary, Spain, and many others, totaling 207 respondents. Among European countries outside of the European Union, Russia, the United Kingdom, and Switzerland were the most frequently mentioned. So people were also coming from those countries, I mean, QED participants. In Asia, Turkey, Israel, and Georgia were the primary countries of residence before coming to Canada. African and American countries were infrequent in the responses and included Egypt, Algeria, Peru, the USA, and Ukrainian newcomers under QED arrived from various regions in Ukraine. And this figure to the right represents respondents where they're coming from in Ukraine. So respondents' last region of residence in Ukraine is taken into consideration regardless of whether they came to Canada directly from Ukraine or had lived in another country before arriving in Canada. So it was like where they're actually coming from in Ukraine. And here we can see that last region of residence in Ukraine, the western part of Ukraine is 31%, the center is 34%, and 18% of them are from Kiev. Eastern part is 21%, and southern part is 13%. It should also be said that 3.3% are coming from territories occupied by Russia before the full-scale war. So before the February 2022, I'm sorry, before February 24, 2022. So they are coming from those occupied regions by Russia, which were occupied starting in 2014, like the Autonomous Republic of Crimea, Sevastopol, some parts of Luhansk and Donetsk regions. And well, experience of living in the occupation zone by all possible means and of what people left there, relatives, friends, acquaintances, work, real estate, is very traumatic. While the presence or absence of the first of some of them is like subjective, like for example, we're losing relatives or friends. What we can measure is, for example, the real estate, and people are losing the real estate. This is quite countable. And as of the survey date, we had 149 individuals indicated that their property was located in the occupied zone, meaning that they lost their property, and those newly occupied territories by Russia, the Zaporizhia region, the Kherson region. So people simply are like losing all their property and coming anywhere possible to find a safe haven. As for intentions for permanent residency in Canada, well, the immigration attitudes of Ukrainian newcomers through QED in the Greater Toronto area have sparked extensive discussions within the Ukrainian diaspora. Some advocate for retaining as many Ukrainians as possible in Canada to contribute to diaspora growth and enhance its reputation. Conversely, others believe that post-war, all Ukrainians under the QED program should return to Ukraine, where their assistance and talents are crucial for the nation's development. Well, nevertheless, Ukrainians will naturally determine their course of action themselves, and our objective here is to explore prevailing sentiments among newcomers, their desire to remain in Canada, their self-assessment of opportunities and factors that might influence their decision to return. And the data here show that if we combine together the first two lines, the blue and yellow, 38.5 and 39.7, we get 78.2% of respondents, means like over 3/4, who express a firm commitment to stay in Canada, with more than a third expressing a strong willingness to take any necessary steps to establish permanent residency. So it's like almost everyone permanently, while also every fourth Ukrainian is not yet sure, but they incline to stay in Canada permanently. And aspiration is one aspect, like I want, this is the aspiration, yeah? Yet assessing Ukrainian self-perceived chances of permanent residency in Canada can provide a deeper understanding of the desire versus reality dichotomy. Respondents were queried with the following question: while desire is one aspect, how would you assess your actual prospects for permanent residency in Canada? And half of the respondents, which means like 47.1%, those who rated here 5 and 4, assess their prospects optimistically, while slightly over a third, 34.7, it's those who rated 3, hold a moderate view. And conversely, almost 1/5, 18.2, who rated 2 and 1, assess their prospects negatively. And the assessment of real prospects for staying in Canada can be influential in shaping decisions, particularly for those who are uncertain but inclined to stay permanently. A follow-up question related to the previous one was evaluate your level of familiarity with Canada's immigration policy, like programs, regulations, required documents, and procedures. And here on the bottom of the slide, we can see that 29.7% consider their familiarity with Canada's immigration policy to be excellent or good, and around 40% rated it as satisfactory, and approximately like 30% rated their knowledge as poor. Overall, fewer than 1/3 of respondents deemed their understanding of immigration policy to be good. While this assessment is subjective, it's like how people understand if they understand the immigration policy or not, it reflects how well the respondents have acquainted themselves with the relevant programs, rules, required documents, and procedures. Well, from my personal experience, I can say that sometimes I see people who are saying like, well, I understand the immigration policy very well. And when we are starting talking, they are not. So it's very subjective. Here on this slide, you can see the bubbles, and those bubbles will appear on different other slides. It's like illustrative material for you to see what people are saying actually about the problem, which is written on the slide. So you can like directly dive into people's thoughts. Ukrainians who arrived in Canada under the QIT program and expressed a desire to remain have specific reasons for their choice. Security, economic and political stability, and the aspiration for a better future for their children stand out as the primary factors motivating Ukrainians to pursue permanent residency in Canada. Amidst the challenges of war, individuals seek a peaceful and welcoming environment, and Canada aligns with such aspirations. Motives of self-fulfillment, opportunities for lucrative employment, and an elevated standard of living rank second. Nevertheless, the influence of factors such as the presence of relatives, a robust Ukrainian diaspora, a quality education, or a clear and transparent immigration process, which might be expected to significantly impact the desire to stay in Canada, is not really definitive. So they're taking like number 4, number 5, number 6, and so on. The reasons for coming specifically to Canada among Ukrainian newcomers are diverse. So on the previous slide, we had one aspect, and here we have reasons for coming specifically to Canada, and motives of safety, social stability, the desire of a better future for their children, and an English-speaking environment are the leading reasons why Ukrainians arrived in Canada, particularly into the Greater Toronto area. And additionally, a significant motivation is the desire to obtain permanent resident status in Canada, which doesn't necessarily mean that respondents are ready to commit their entire lives to Canada. So many people just want to get it and to go out. Approximately a quarter of respondents chose the motivation of a powerful Ukrainian diaspora. Some individuals also came to Canada without any specific reason, seeking refuge anywhere. And I also had seen such people who were like, well, I came to Canada just to come to Canada. I didn't have any like reason to come here. I just wanted, and that's it. So as for some characteristics of respondents, well, I should say that, for example, as for the distribution of research participants by sex, we had the majority of respondents women, 63.2%, and 36.8% of men. You can also see the distribution by the age group. The majority of our respondents were the working force age. It's from 25 to 44. And the data here indicates a greater willingness of men to do all they can to stay in Canada permanently, with a 7.6% gap from women. And overall saying 76.4% of women and 81.2% of men express readiness to stay in Canada permanently. It's those who are like sure they want to stay here and those who are inclined to stay here, both. But well, the difference is slight. And here I put the information about those who are like absolutely sure that they want to stay in Canada. Women are also more inclined to live in Canada in the future, 23.6%, almost a quarter, while among men this figure is 18.8%, not even a fifth. Young working age individuals aged 25 to 44 years, it's 68.4%, were the main research participants. And individuals aged 25 to 44 are more inclined to stay in Canada permanently, while those aged 55 and older are less decisive. Overall, while among the youth aged 18 to 24 and those aged 55 plus, an uncertain desire to stay in Canada prevails. They are not really sure if they want to be here. One group yearns for lived past, while the other struggles to part with childhood and teenage age and adapt to a new social reality. The willingness to leave Canada fluctuates around 20% among those aged 25 to 44, increasing with the older age groups. It's also higher among those under 24 years old. Such a distribution between age and immigration attitude wasn't really surprising because, well, working age young people are much more mobile and ready for change than the elderly and children and teenagers. There is also a stereotype that the language spoken at home may influence immigration attitudes, meaning that those who communicate at home in the official language of the country they came from are less likely to stay in a new country, while those using a different language are supposedly more inclined to stay in a new country. And well, we examined whether this stereotype is true for Ukrainian newcomers under the QED program. And I should say that the stereotype is partially confirmed. Those who use two languages or one other than Ukrainian at home are more inclined to stay in Canada permanently. Well, there is a difference ranging from 7 to 13%, meaning that those who speak at home English or Russian, or they're mixing Ukrainian and Russian, or Ukrainian and English, they're more inclined to stay in Canada rather than those who are solely Ukrainian speakers. Return intentions among Ukrainian speakers are also higher, up to 14%. And while both values do not significantly differ from other groups, as well as I said before, the language spoken at home can be a significant factor in determining one's immigration attitudes. I should also say that the closer to the border with Russia the respondent resided, the higher the determination to do all they can to stay in Canada permanently. The willingness to return to Ukraine also partially depends on the proximity to the border of Russia, as we can see. And damage to the property can also play a role in the respondent's desire to stay in Canada permanently. There is a thought that those who have nowhere to return, who have lost their homes and other property, are more inclined to stay in a new place permanently, which is quite logical. The property condition significantly influences immigration attitudes, And respondents whose homes and the infrastructure of their locations have suffered serious damage are more determined to stay in Canada permanently, especially those who no longer have property in Ukraine. However, well, there is no critical difference in the number of those wishing to return. As for financial situation, well, assessment of one's current financial situation is an important factor in determining immigration attitudes. This estimate is highly subjective because, well, everyone assesses their own financial needs and their financial situation differently. For some people, 2,000 Canadian dollars per month is enough, while for others, 5,000 is not enough, given the same criteria, like, for example, the same price rent, the same groceries, the same number of family members. And it is believed that the higher the assessment of current financial situation, like the more the immigrant considers it, the fewer reasons the immigrant wishes to return to the country of immigration. And here we can see how respondents assess their financial situation. Almost 25% consider their financial situation to be good, while 38.4% satisfactory and 36.7% as poor. The statement about the dependence of immigration attitudes on the assessment of their own financial situation is only partially confirmed, and only in terms of the determination to do everything possible to stay in Canada permanently. The difference between the extremes is quite significant. It's also reflected in the determination to leave Canada at the earliest opportunity. Those with worse financial situation are more determined to leave Canada, which is also like very logical because, well, people are considering themselves not being able to handle the situation, and they want to proceed further. The place of residence, apartment, house, is the way of paying and the way of paying for it, like it's a rent or it's free of charge from relatives or friend, and the stability of the place of residence are important in determining how a newcomer feels in a new place. Having a roof overhead, being able to pay for it, especially here in the Greater Toronto area where rental prices are sky high and literally everything is more costly, and feeling comfortable at home can influence immigration attitudes, and it is a factor of personal security and peace of mind. And here on the slide, we can see that 12.9% rent a house, while 43.2% rent an apartment, and 26.7% rent a room. So the majority, not the majority, but well, almost half of the people, they rent an apartment. And those who rent houses are more likely to do all they can to stay in Canada permanently because, well, they can afford it. Because, well, renting a house is quite an expensive thing, while those who rent apartments and rooms are less determined. 90% of respondents, they're paying for housing, while some of them don't. And we also had 2.4% of those who do not have any permanent housing and they live in shelter, in rent, or on the street. And the highest percentage of those who would leave Canada is among those who do not have permanent housing in Canada, exactly who are living in a shelter or in a tent or on the street. And well, the level of comfort is also important, and a high level of comfort and decent living conditions are undoubtedly very important components of every person's life nowadays. The level of satisfaction with living conditions and comfort also affects immigration attitudes, as they influence how a person feels. It's the people are feeling calmness and wellness. A more comfortable atmosphere in a new place increases the level of satisfaction and accordingly the level of desire to stay in a new place because, well, people are feeling comfortable. But the feeling of comfort and the assessment of what constitutes decent living conditions are subjective. For some, a small room is enough, while for others, a whole mansion is not enough. So the comfort is very subjective, and the results show that living conditions and comfort have an impact on respondents' immigration attitudes. The higher the comfort rate, the higher the determination to do everything possible to permanently stay in Canada. Lower living and comfort conditions generally encourage respondents to consider leaving Canada. Better living conditions and comfort contribute to a higher level of life satisfaction, peace, comfort, and stability. Only a quarter of respondents, as we can see on the figure to the right, are completely satisfied with their current place of residence. And around 3/4 of the respondents would like to change their current residence to another one. However, almost half of them, 45.7%, cannot afford it. Among those who planned to look for new housing at the time of the survey and could afford it, the prerogative was given to something cheaper because, well, people who came here, some of them who were considering finding something cheaper, they came here with some money, so they found something whatever to live in, and while they're living there, they are starting searching for something more affordable. So they needed some roof over their head, and while having that roof, they're feeling more stable in looking for something more affordable. As for jobs, well, permanent official employment provides a sense of stability and influence of, well, it influences one's attitudes towards immigration. The availability of work, ease of finding a job, and income are all factors that can affect one's immigration attitudes. Employment increases confidence and professional growth, regardless of whether the job is in the same field as before coming to a new country. Developing new skills, improving proficiency in the official language, and building new contacts can help a person progress further. As for our respondents, so we had a slight majority of those who had at least some kind of job. However, only 41% had a permanent job. The rest had like not really a permanent job or like part-time job. And the 35.3% were looking for a job, while 8.6% were not looking for a job. They were like elderly people or teenagers or whatever. The longer a person has been in Canada, the higher the likelihood that they have a job. Well, there is like a general uh, image that an immigrant gets the job in around the first 6 months being in a new place. And well, this stereotype is a bit confirmed because of, if like, let's have a look at the table here. The longer a person stays in Canada, the greater their chance of having a permanent job, both qualified and not qualified. And for example, by comparing the employment rates between the first four columns, which is like from February to November 2022, no, from February to February, from 2022 to 2023, we can see that the unemployment rate is quite stable from 23 to 27%, while those who were by the survey date coming recently, their unemployment rate is much higher. But well, I should say that an unemployment rate in Canada is around like 6-7% now, while the unemployment rate among Ukrainian newcomers, even after half of the year of being here, is still 25%, around 25. So the unemployment rate of newcomers is much higher than the average Canadian rate. And well, logically saying that having a permanent job significantly affects immigration attitudes. 50% of those 50% of the respondents are willing to do all they can to stay in Canada permanently, those who have a job, compared to 31.5% of those who have temporary or no job at all. Often immigrants face challenges at their first workplace for different reasons. It might be work culture differences, language barrier, different approaches to the same responsibilities, and so on. And ability to adapt to the labor standards of the host country shows readiness of a newcomer to adapt to different labor behaviors and new experiences. Well, this is why many Canadian employers prefer candidates with local work experience. And the research data show that 37% face some challenges at work, and people could identify like several of them. Many of them are the quarter experience, lack knowledge of English and do not always understand everything. Others are facing cultural differences or differences in approaching to work. But 72.9% are satisfied with their contemporary employment, which is a very interesting contrast with what they want to proceed with, because, well, despite the fact that they are satisfied with their contemporary employment, they can look for another employment. And Ukrainians are facing challenges in employment. And for example, social networks like Facebook literally abound with different complaints about Canadian employers. Quite often, Ukrainians become victims of scams and unreliable employers who do not pay salaries according to the agreement. It might seem to them that workers' rights are not protected and there is no accountability for unreliable employers. Mainly newcomers might think this way because of their limited understanding of their rights and who may be contacted as a result. The way a person sees themselves at work can also affect immigration attitudes. There are those who are completely satisfied with their current employment and those who work only to earn money, hating work passionately. Assessment of one's prospects, readiness for changes if one doesn't like something, or the desire to immerse oneself even deeper in the current work is extremely important, as it affects a person's mental health and the feeling of personal satisfaction. And here, like, well, 46.3% will continue to work regardless of positive or negative experiences they have at their workplace. And, well, 53.7% plan to change jobs for various reasons, despite the fact that just 27% have negatively assessed their current employment. So there are like many people who are looking for something better, despite the fact that they may be satisfied with their current employment. A high level of proficiency in the official language of the country of arrival contributes to faster adaptation and more successful settlement in a new place. Ukrainian newcomers under the QED program, unlike many other groups of immigrants, have a lower level of English proficiency on average because English is not a widely spoken language in Ukraine, since Ukraine hasn't had extensive interaction with the English-speaking world. But Ukraine has recently seen significant progress in English language popularization, and here on this slide you can see how respondents evaluate their level of English, how they perceive their level of English. 23% is low, it's those who responded 1, 2, 3. Average is 4, 4, 4, 5, 6, it's 36%, and high, it's 7, 8, 9, 10, it's 40%. And the level of the level of English language proficiency is not an obstacle for Ukrainian newcomers in their desire to stay and live in Canada permanently or go back. These values are essentially independent to each other, especially taking into account the high percentage of those who came to Canada precisely because English is the official language here. This is indirect evidence of the fact that the general Ukrainians feel comfortable in the English-speaking environment and try to adapt to it. Most succeed in doing so. Improving mastery level of the official language both promotes more active integration into the host society and is also a guarantee for successful social adaptation. Ukrainian newcomers are especially in need of attention because English is not widely spoken in Ukraine. And here we also can see how respondents are learning English. Many of them are studying on their own. Some of them are attending in-person courses or online courses. A few of them study with a tutor, but 13% have no such need since, well, they are already fluent, and 12% do not have the opportunity to study because of children, work, health, and so on. It's like, well, they don't have time for it at the moment. The Ukrainian diaspora is one of the most powerful in Canada, with extensive network of service, cultural, academic, artistic, professional, religious, sports, educational, and youth organizations. There are about 100 Ukrainian diaspora organizations of various areas of activity in the Greater Toronto Area only. And these organizations play an important role in supporting the Ukrainian diaspora and in promoting the interests of Ukraine in Canada. Ukrainian newcomers also use their services. Many organizations literally experienced a fresh breath in their activities thanks to active newcomers from Ukraine. And 42.7% of respondents used or use the services of Ukrainian diaspora organizations. Ukrainian diaspora service organizations provide a wide range of services to Ukrainian newcomers, and mostly Ukrainian newcomers are asking for English courses, for job search, or for information and consultative support, like if they don't know where is located and which documents are needed. Well, I also asked respondents to to write down which organizations they have addressed. And I didn't provide them with the list of organizations, so they could write organizations themselves, how they recall them in their mind, if they remember where they have gone to get some support. And we got 3 most addressed organizations. It's Canadian Ukrainian Immigrant Aid Society, Ukrainian Canadian Social Services Toronto, and Parachute, which was working at the survey date. Now it doesn't work anymore. So, and well, more than half rate their experience as positive, which is quite a high evaluation rank compared to other settlement agencies for immigrants. It can be assumed that those who evaluated their experiences as negative either could not receive the expected assistance there or due to misunderstanding with their employees. Sometimes it happens. There is no dependence of respondents' immigration attitudes and their experience with Ukrainian diaspora organizations. Also, there are many organizations in the Greater Toronto Area that offer services for immigrants in preparing documents, searching for housing and work, filling out various forms for federal and provincial institutions, and providing consultations on various matters. Some organizations offer a wider range of services, such as help with translation, language courses, support in resolving personal issues, filling out tax returns, and so on. And I divided this slide. To the left, it's about Ukrainian diaspora organizations, and to the right, it's other settlement agencies. The numbers are quite similar in terms of how often Ukrainians are using their services. Here, we have 49.7% who use the settlement services, and they mostly ask about the job search, their English courses, and the resume building there. More than half of them evaluate their experience positively, which is a high rating. In general, there is no significant difference in experience evaluation between settlement services and Ukrainian diaspora organizations. And also, there is no dependence of respondents' immigration attitudes and their experience with settlement agencies. So, meaning that the experience of interacting with different settlement agencies does not influence the immigration attitudes at all. A social circle is of great importance for newcomers. It's difficult to overestimate the influence of the surrounding social circle on the formation of thoughts and attitudes of newcomers. Past and new experiences are intertwined and give way to the formation of new thoughts and ideas. A person goes through a reassessment of values, learns new behavioral patterns, and with time finds oneself in a new social circle, in a new social reality. The people around newcomers, through their actions and their example, show them how to act and how not to act. The social norms of the host society can cause disgust, or the opposite, can make one think about something new, expand the perception horizons. Social contacts that remain with the newcomer from the past life are mixed with new contacts with new people. All this leads to social transformation, to perception transformation. And the data shows that Ukrainian newcomers communicate the most with their families and with the same Ukrainian newcomers who arrived in Canada under the QED program, which is quite logical. Well, the family are the closest relatives, and other Ukrainian newcomers under QED have a similar social experience. They face similar problems and group together to solve them. A slightly smaller number of newcomers communicate with Canadians and other immigrants, while the number fluctuates around 50%. Meaning that about half of Ukrainians have good acquaintances and friends among Canadians and immigrants of other origins. On the one hand, this indicates certain difficulties in communicating, but on the other hand, the percentage is not that low, therefore there is no total isolation. The dominant language of an immigrant's communication with others can show which group of people the newcomer communicates with the most, whether it's family and friends, immigrants from the same country or from other countries, or those that were born in the host country. The dominant language of communication of an immigrant can also influence immigration attitudes as it was already shown earlier in the example of the language of communication at home, the dominant language of newcomers' social circles has a certain influence on immigration attitudes. The most determined to stay in Canada permanently are obviously those whose dominant language of their social circle is English. 50.2% want to stay here. The least determined are those whose social circle is mostly Ukrainian speaking. Only a third are ready to do all they can to stay in Canada permanently. However, those with a predominantly Ukrainian speaking circle are more inclined to return to Ukraine in the future, 2 to 3 times more than in any other groups. And well, the analysis of the research results revealed which of the respondents' characteristics have the most and the least influence on their attitudes toward permanent immigration. And the top five characteristics are safety level of Canada, mental health while in Canada, physical health while in Canada, impression of Canada, and attitude towards completing a language test for immigration. I'll explain it now separately, one by one. So, the sense of safety plays a significant role in shaping one's immigration attitudes. Aristotle said that humans are social animals, that's why they seek a safe place for themselves, their children, and relatives, just like other animals. During times of war, the need to find a safe place becomes one of the most crucial factors that determine one's desire to stay in a particular place. Although the perception of safety may not always match reality, it will not stop a person from continuing this search. Canada is considered one of the safest countries in the world, along with its major cities such as Toronto. And this is one of the reasons why many Ukrainians came to Canada after the war started. And here you can see how Ukrainians are assessing their sense of safety. The majority of them are feeling absolutely safe in Canada. It's like almost more than 75% are feeling perfectly safe, while some like 19.2% they are like assessing their sense of safety as satisfying, while others, some 5.4% don't feel safe here. And well, sense of safety is one of the most significant factors in determining the desire to stay in Canada permanently. There is a significant difference between those who feel absolutely safe in Canada and are willing to do anything to stay here permanently, and those who do not feel safe and well, consequently lack such a desire. More than 3 times difference, as you can see on the table, the opposite red numbers. Meanwhile, the sense of safety is not critically important for those who have not yet decided but are considering staying here permanently. And however, those who do not feel safe in Canada are much more determined to leave Canada in almost equal proportions to Ukraine or to Europe. There are reasons why a newcomer may be concerned with, when moving to a new country. These include external factors such as social differences and unfamiliar rules, as well as internal factors such as previous experiences and lack of confidence. The respondents were asked an open-ended, optional question, which was, if you don't feel safe in Canada, what concerns do you have? And it was consciously decided to make it open-ended and non-binding so that respondents could freely express their concerns about safety in Canada. In other words, the question was purposely designed not to find out what the respondents are concerned about, but to let them try to identify what makes them feel unsafe occasionally or constantly. Out of all the respondents, 346 respondents we got. It's 34.2% of all the people who participated in the survey. So they wrote what concerns they have. And the answers were not organized based on the level of safety felt by the individuals, but rather categorized based on the reasons for their concerns. And you can see here in numbers what concerns Ukrainians have. Ukrainian newcomers have three main concerns, which are drugs spread, homelessness, and the mental state of people around them. Here in Toronto, external reasons that are beyond the control of the respondents are more significant than internal reasons, such as their financial situation or the lack of security for the future. So Ukrainians internally feel more confident than externally. I mean, like when they're observing what's happening around, it recalls to their feeling of safety. As for mental health, it's a significant factor that influences attitude towards immigration. After arriving in a new country, one's mental health can change significantly due to various circumstances. For instance, someone may have had high expectations when they arrived in Canada, which were shattered by the harsh reality, leading to a decline in their mental health. Conversely, someone who had low expectations may exceed them, leading to an improvement of their mental health. There are just rough examples of how the mental health can change. Sometimes a small thing can worsen one's mental health, while a chance of a new new opportunity can unexpectedly improve it. Over half of the survey respondents claimed that they felt mentally better in Canada than in Ukraine. However, a quarter of respondents felt worse, while the mental health of 1/5 of respondents remained unchanged. This suggests that Canada has had a generally positive impact on the mental health of respondents, and well, as 75% of cases either showed no change or improvement, which is a significant positive indicator because, well, lots of people are feeling better here. Significant changes in the mental health indicate the adaptive mechanisms used by the person to settle in a new place. Reactions to difficulties and adversities, general emotional state, reaction to stress, and overall ability to cope with the situation. Having good mental health is an important factor in determining confidence to stay in Canada permanently. The difference between feeling much better in Canada and all other respondents is enormous, as you can see on red numbers, opposite red numbers on the table. Those who feel mentally much worse in Canada but are ready to do anything to stay here permanently are in a state of despair due to the absence of knowledge of what to do and where to go. Intentions to leave Canada are higher the worse the respondent's mental state is in Canada compared to Ukraine. Physical health can also be an influential factor in determining attitudes towards immigration. A new place can affect the body differently due to various factors, such as, like, for example, climatic conditions, food, accessibility of doctors, ease of making medical appointments, and the overall condition of the healthcare system. All these factors can significantly impact one's physical health. Almost half of the respondents stated that their physical health remained the same after coming to Canada, while more than a third reported an improvement. The reasons for the improvement varied from receiving prescriptions for necessary medications and undergoing surgeries that were not covered by insurance in Ukraine or in Europe, but were covered here in Canada, to simply feeling better in general. The tendency in this case is exactly the same as in the dependence of immigration attitudes on mental health. So mental and physical health are very interconnected. That's why those two factors are very influential. But while access to healthcare services can be a crucial factor in deciding to stay permanently in a new country, the quality and availability of healthcare services matter to most people. Luckily, Canada offers a broad range of excellent medical services that are free of cost. Ukrainian newcomers in Ontario can generally avail of OHIP provincial health insurance program, ensuring good health maintenance. However, the availability of provincial insurance is not the only critical factor. Access to family medicine and a good family doctor also affect one's health and overall impressions of the medical system. Healthcare is an area where Canada faces some challenges, and we can see here to the left that 31.9% have a family doctor, while 23.7% visit walk-in clinics periodically, and 46.5% do not use any medical services. They've never had any need in using them. Canada's healthcare system is currently facing numerous challenges and is considered to be in crisis. Some of the challenges include a shortage of doctors and hospitals, underfunding, difficulties in obtaining licenses for foreign specialists to practice medicine, low salaries of nurses, and very long waiting lists for appointments with specialized doctor and for medical procedures. These problems are particularly severe in large cities, such as Toronto and its surrounding areas, due to their faster population growth. It remains unclear how the government will address these challenges. Additionally, Ukrainian newcomers face the same issues as Canadians face here. Number 4 is impressions of Canada. It would be naive to assume that every newcomer likes Canada. As a country with high standards of living and wealth, Canada has its own specific traits, lifestyle, unspoken rules, and law. Not every newcomer considers them understandable and logical. All of this influences the perception and evaluation of Canada by the newcomers, but we should say that Ukrainians have very positive impressions about Canada. Negative impressions have only like 5.9%, neutral impressions have 20.1%, and very positive experience here in Canada and very good impressions about Canada have 74% of them. And attitudes toward immigration can differ significantly depending on their impressions of Canada by 28 times. Just compare those numbers, 1.7 and 48.9 in the table. Those not impressed by Canada mostly do not intend to stay here, while those highly impressed are conversely very determined to stay here permanently. Canada accepts 5 language tests specifically for immigration purposes, which are IELTS General, CELPIP General, or PTE Core for English, and TESEF or TEF for French. Since passing the language test is a mandatory condition for starting the immigration process in almost all immigration programs, Ukrainian newcomers who incline to stay and live in Canada permanently are interested in successfully passing them. Only 5.1% have already passed the test by the survey date. A quarter of respondents, 24.9, had been preparing for the test at the date of the survey. Almost half, 45.8, had only been planning to start preparing, and yet the other quarter, 24.2, had not been planning to pass language tests at all. These were mostly either those who do not plan to stay in Canada permanently, or those who plan to immigrate under programs that do not require language tests. Those who do not plan to pass language tests at all have a significantly lower percentage in terms of their desire to stay in Canada permanently compared to other groups, a difference in almost 3 times. At the same time, the share in the first 3 groups here does not differ significantly, like the very fact of the active nature of interaction with language tests, from plans to their implementation, shows a much greater orientation to stay in Canada permanently, meaning that if the person somehow interacts with the language test, at least thinks of it, their desire to stay in Canada is higher than rather than those who do not plan to interact with language tests at all. The factors least influential on the attitude towards immigration and the desire to stay in Canada permanently are the city of choice in the GTA and the receipt of provincial aid, meaning that it doesn't matter whether a person lives in the GTA or it doesn't matter if they get benefits or welfare, it doesn't affect their immigration attitudes. Ukrainian newcomers under the QED program choose various locations for settlement and further residence within the GTA. The majority prefers Toronto, as you can see on the map to the left, and the surrounding cities. However, there are also those who opt for small towns, townships, and even villages. People are motivated by various factors. Some have relatives and friends in the area, others hope to find good employment, and some simply feel comfortable in either a large city or a small village. Figure here illustrates the distribution of research participants based on their place of residence within the GTA at the time of the survey. As a response to the financial difficulties faced by Ukrainian newcomers, Ontario has introduced a special program which is called Ontario Emergency Assistance, which can be applied for by those who haven't yet found a job, are renting housing, have already spent some time in the province, and whose personal finances are running out. Assistance is paid every 48 days based on an application and submitted documents and can be extended for up to 6 months. It's important not to confuse this assistance with the one-time $3,000 assistance from the federal government. These are two different benefits. Provincial assistance is only available to those who meet certain criteria, not for everyone, while federal assistance was available to all who arrived in Canada under the QED program until March 31st, 2024. The fact of receiving provincial financial assistance does not affect the immigration attitudes of respondents. The distribution of immigration attitudes among all groups of respondents does not differ, which means that receiving it is not decisive for Ukrainian newcomers, and this is a positive development since receiving of it does not affect the desire to stay in Canada. Well, saying it very simple, Ukrainians here are not because of benefits or welfare, and the receiving of it does not influence their desire to stay here or not. Despite the desire to immigrate to Canada, stay and live here permanently, immigrants can still be drawn to their historical homeland. Motivators of interpersonal relationship, namely family and friends, are dominant. Half of the respondents expressed them. Patriotism and nostalgia for life in Ukraine are relevant for a third of the respondents. Personal housing is also an important motivator for a third of respondents. Also, a third of the respondents have decided to stay in Canada. Well, they have firmly decided to stay in Canada. It's like nothing motivates them to go back. The end of the war can make a change in immigrants' attitudes towards immigration to Canada because, while the situation stabilization may actualize the question of one's place here and opportunities there, in the question which I have just said, it was considered whether Ukrainian newcomers under QED are inclined to return to Ukraine when the war ends through the prism of many factors. Here, the attitudes toward return after the war are considered regardless of other factors. And the question of return itself is put differently, whether the end of the war will encourage a return to Ukraine. And here to the right on the figure, you can see that 28% the end of the war can encourage them to go back, while 39.6 are not sure if the war can encourage them to go back, and 32.2% have like firmly decided, no, the end of the war does not influence my decision. It's like it's not dependent on that. A person cannot control everything in their lives. Outside factors oftentimes force a person to make unwanted decisions. The desire to settle in Canada permanently may meet numerous obstacles and not come true, remaining unfulfilled. Respondents were offered to answer the question regarding the circumstances which can force them to return to Ukraine despite their intentions. The dominant reason forcing Ukrainian newcomers under QED to return to Ukraine is the factor of their interaction with Canada, namely its visa or work permit expiration, like their proof of legal status in the country. If newcomers fail to extend or renew their legal status or convert it into another status, they must return to Ukraine. The second most important reason is the state of relatives in Ukraine. In case something bad happens to their relatives, just under half of respondents are ready to go back to Ukraine as soon as possible and to help them. While preparing this sociological report, as I told before at the beginning, it was decided to send a mini survey to the same respondents in order to track the changes of their attitudes toward immigration 4 months after completing the main survey. To satisfy the needs of the focus groups, respondents were offered to leave their email addresses if they wanted to. Out of 1,011 people, 272 left their email addresses, and they were sent a mini survey later, which was filled by 168 respondents. Results revealed that the attitude has not changed for most respondents. 87.4% chose the same option as in the main survey. However, 12.6% changed their mind. 5.4 favored staying in Canada, and 7.2 intended to leave. 6.6% have in fact already left Canada by that date. out of which only 0.6 have never intended to stay in Canada for long, and the rest 6% intended to do so. So they intended to stay, but well, they were moving back to Europe or to Ukraine. 89.9% of all respondents continue living in the province of Ontario, out of which 4.8% moved from the Greater Toronto Area to other cities and towns in the province. Additionally, 3.5% moved to other provinces of Canada, and 6.6% left Canada altogether. 4.2% returned to the European Union, and 2.4% returned to Ukraine. Results of the mini-survey shown in this afterward demonstrate the dynamics of change in the attitudes toward the migration of Ukrainian newcomers under the QED program. And by the end of this presentation, I would like to acknowledge the following people and organizations. It's Ukrainian Canadian Social Services Toronto and Olena Lezhanska in particular for providing premises for conducting focus groups and the platform for research results online presentation. Workers of settlement agencies for the research survey distributions, namely Oksana Semenyuk, Hristina Kutash, Hennady Stavitsky, and Irina Pari from Ukrainian Canadian Social Services Toronto, Marina Sokolov, Yulia Sidorenko from Culture Link, Olesya Silchuk from North York Community House, and Anna Haychuk from Ukrainian Moms in Toronto. Then volunteers for their help in translation of this report into English. There were some people who helped to prepare this report into English, namely Anna Yakimchuk, Melania Andrushuk, Maria Krajnik, Solomia Repecha, Olena Zubretska, and Sergei Ivanchenko. Also, Canadian Ukrainian Immigrant Aid Society and Eugene Duvalko and Ivanka Timchuk in particular for the opportunity to present the research results and at the 26th Metropolis Canada Conference, Our Immigration System, The Way Forward, on March 14, 2024 in Montreal. This is where the research draft was presented. Also, I'd like to thank those who supported this research, namely Dr. Oleg Romanishin, Dr. Alexander Kondrashov, Dr. Juliana West, Dr. Alisa Zavyalova, Olena Lezhanska, Anna Romanishin, and Angeline Kovalyshin-Hessia. Also, I'd like to thank separately to Olena Lezhanska from Ukrainian Canadian Social Services and Dr. Alexander Kondrashov for providing an online platform for presenting the research results on January 25, 26, 2025. The big thank you to research participants for the time allotted for the survey completion and participation in the focus groups. And a separate thank you to Roy Dean for proofreading of the English report, who actually made it very English language correct. So thank you so much for your attention, and I will be glad to answer any questions if there are any. Thanks. So I'm stopping sharing my screen, and welcome back.
Thank you, Andrei. It's a lot of data to process in 1 hour if we think about how much time and commitment you've done to make sure that this report is available in both languages. And now we had opportunity to hear the English presentation. And for me, when I'm comparing both, it's how much data you and gift to Canada you gave by your research of sharing your knowledge and building community and awareness about what's happening with people who were sharing their stories, like 1,011 participants and follow-up showing that contribution in longitudinal studies. So all of that reminds how critical is continuity of the research, how critical to share the data, and your amazing work in recognizing the need for newcomers to be heard, to be learned from their experience. And now we have opportunity to enjoy your presentation and also having this 90 pages plus report to recognize all this work which you've done together. So thank you for doing this, and thank you for everybody for sharing. Let's see if there's any questions. It will be a great time to highlight some of the work.
Yeah, I would just say that well, these research results have to be being presented much earlier, but unfortunately we faced some obstacles. That's why we're presenting them right now and right here.
Any questions? I've seen lots of comments and in the chat to highlight your amazing work and excellent presentation and easy to follow and great job. All of that. I know it was hard during the presentation when people were sharing that they haven't seen the Crimean apartment for almost 11 years when we recognized when the war started in 2013 and we are in 2025 seeing the impact on many people it has. So I see Juliana.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, I'm just trying to lower my hand now. And I know that this is still being recorded, so it's not. Okay, great. Thank you so much,
Still recording.
Andre. Oh, okay. Thank you so much, Andre. What an incredible, not only piece of important data, but also time capsule, right? That I think is really important for us to understand Ukrainian experience in Canada. I have two questions. One, what kind of follow-up questions would you like to pursue in the future? And two, what has been your greatest sort of aha moment from this piece of research?
Well, what kind of follow-up questions I would like to pursue is to find out if actually people are still here and how their attitudes have changed. What if their attitudes have changed? What made those changes? And if their attitudes haven't been changed, what are they doing to pursue permanent residency if they want it? Or like how they are building their life if they are not really interested in permanent residency, but just here in Canada, waiting for a peaceful time to come back. This is like main follow-up questions, which I would probably address somewhere in the future. And greatest learning from the research, it was quite often when I was surprised with the results. I remember discussing the first results with my friend when I was writing the sociological report in Ukrainian. I was like, look at here, this is so different. I didn't expect it. And he was like, yeah, absolutely different experiences are people having and facing, absolutely like obstacles and things which we wouldn't even think people would face here. But well, I'm glad that there were not huge obstacles people are having here. I mean, like not many of them have actually faced them. And yeah, mostly the research results got by me were expected by me. I was like thinking, yeah, probably the mental health would be the most important part here because of the trauma people are getting. The physical health would also be probably the most one of the most important things because people are people are in need of healing, and like of course the interaction with language tests because well it's a great sign that person is trying to stay here if they're interacting with those language tests or not, because like what's the reason of trying to pass a test? There should be a goal for it. If there is like people are trying to prepare themselves for IELTS or for some other language test, that means that well they are planning to stay here actually. Yeah, thanks.
I've seen the question in a chat. Do you think these results would mostly mirror the experiences of recent Ukrainians across Canada?
I think yes, the majority. There might be very slight differences, but I mean in numbers. But I believe the experiences in general would be the same when Ukrainians in Canada. I mean about the mental health, the physical health, the language tests, and so on and so forth. However, those reasons for feeling unsafe may be different because well different places have different social reality. Let's say like downtown Toronto is very different from Mississauga, or downtown Toronto is very different from Prince Albert, right? And how it's going there. Yeah, I think those might be very different things. But in general, numbers would be the same. Yeah, I think, yeah.
Great. Any other questions?
This is an observation. Today, in about a half an hour, somebody that I met through the Ukrainian diaspora classes that Sasha led. I ended up tutoring in English Ukrainians, mostly from Ukraine, but all over the world. But a mom and daughter from Odessa ended up coming to Canada July, it'll be 2 years this July, and they're coming to visit us in about a half an hour's time. And so, you know, it's not just about the statistics, it's about the human relationships, the support systems that are not just about food and housing and all of those other things, but, you know, how we as, you know, I'm a second generation Ukrainian on one side, first generation Polish on the other side, how, you know, we have felt comfortable reaching out, and those that we've reached out to have felt comfortable to be with us. And that has, you know, sometimes it's very, you know, not very deep, but sometimes deep relationships do.
Emotional connections.
Exactly. And my husband and I have been to North Battleford to visit this family, and we've moved, and now they are coming to Saskatoon to visit us today. And for me, it's really important that I keep those connections. But most of the people that I met through that, and I'm not talking about the core group, but I'm talking about those who came to learn English, didn't continue with those connections. They already had supporter connections, or they found the English language very difficult. I have also kept in contact with a couple who didn't come through the QIT program, but ended up, and they moved to Saskatoon, and I have kept in contact with them also. So it has made a difference not only in their lives, but it has made a difference in our lives if we have chosen. And you don't have to be Ukrainian diaspora to have reached out, because I could tell you many stories of people who reached out that have no Ukrainian background.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to share that human interest story, because today of all days, Sasha and her daughter Emma are coming, and her husband Igor, or Ihor. I'm not sure how, I think he likes to be called Igor. He came to Canada a year later. He was a member of the militia, but the Ukrainian government gave him permission to leave. And the reason is because their younger daughter has experienced something in Ukraine and has mental health problems here now. And she needed her dad and her mom.
Yeah, those experiences are very traumatic. I mean, this war traumatizes the entire society very deeply.
Thank you, Angie, for sharing. I know it's part of the stories which we carry and which we learn. And even yesterday when we had presentation, we had people attending who were participants of the study. So you will know that every story who shared this feedback from 1011, those who were able to, and many who were still unspoken and we don't know. We want to make sure there is appropriate services, adequate support, accessible connections to those who can reach out, who can be able to address the concerns which Dr. Zavialov shared in the study to make sure that the future of newcomer supports, newcomer adaptation, newcomer integration, newcomer experiences will be able to be voiced and visible, and responses found. So thank you. I see Juliana, one more question.
No, I just wanted to build on Angie's important reminder of relationships, and I wanted to thank you, Andre, because you know sometimes presenting a very data dense report can be, it can end up being quite dry and impersonal. And I just wanted to comment that I really, really appreciated your presentation style. You told stories that was, still absolutely honoring the data. But I think more importantly, I felt that you were honoring the voices of the participants who shared. And that is, as an academic, I've seen way too many super bone dry presentations that seem to depersonalize. And I just wanted to say that your presentation style, I was really touched by it, and thank you for that. And so, yeah, it's a statement to me about your engagement, not only in terms of getting the data, but also very much honoring participants. And so, thank you so much.
Thanks. Yeah, that's true. Thanks.
Thank you. I just checking if there's any additional questions, because we can reach out to Dr. Zavyarov in the future. There is opportunity to connect for any immigration questions and research opportunities for the future. And we are excited to have this opportunity to be here today to listen to your finding, Andrei, and to see how critical your research is to transforming lives and ensuring that data is still part of discussion whenever we plan any action. So thank you everybody for participating, for sharing knowledge, and thank you, Dr. Zavyalov, for your research and for your sharing today with us too. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.